I'm seeking advice from fellow fathers who have experienced infidelity in their marriages. Recently, I found out that my wife, whom I'll refer to as Deidre, cheated on me, and it has had a devastating impact on my family. I'm a 31-year-old male, and my wife is 27. We have 2 children, a 4-year-old daughter named Sammy, and a 2-year-old son named Timmy. The cheating happened in the past few weeks, but before that, I firmly believe my wife was faithful. Actually, I'm certain she was. We got married nearly 6 years ago, and our anniversary is coming up next Saturday, June 26th. Unless something miraculous occurs, this will be our last year together. It pains me to say it, but that's where my thoughts are right now. I won't go into specifics about my profession, but let's just say I have a good job. My wife and I met during her final semester of college, and we got married 13 months later. She followed me to the East Coast, where I worked for 4 years, and where our children were born. Earlier this year, I received a job promotion that allowed me to manage one of our offices located within 15 minutes of our hometowns. Both Deidre and I were thrilled to move back home, especially after having kids, and our parents were overjoyed. My parents, as well as her mother, still reside in the area, and my younger brother is here too. Unfortunately, Deidre's father passed away before I met her. Our families were naturally excited about having both of us back home, but they were particularly enthusiastic about being able to spend more time with their grandchildren. Everything fell into place nicely. My parents had recently relocated to a new home in a 55-plus community and intended to keep our family home while renting it out for additional income. Our family home is a historic gem, sitting gracefully on over 3 acres of land, featuring a small creek meandering through the wooded lot at the back of the property. Instead of purchasing a new house, Deidre and I made the decision to move into the family home and pay rent to my mom and dad. They wanted to ensure that this cherished property stayed within the family for generations to come, and they hoped my brother and I would continue this tradition. Even though my parents and brother weren't keen on receiving rent money, I insisted on it, especially since my dad had recently retired and was depending on the rental income. In a way, paying them rent felt like paying ourselves, since my parents planned to pass everything down to my little brother and me. Now, let me emphasize that this house holds immense sentimental value to my family. Over the years, my parents have taken impeccable care of it, but there were a few necessary repairs after we moved in. Given its historical nature, the house boasts unique fixtures and features that require specialized attention. For the past 35 years, my parents had been collaborating with a local contracting company that specializes in working on older homes and has performed the majority of the significant repair work on our house. They do an outstanding job with older properties. So, after compiling a list of projects, I contacted them and obtained a cost estimate. The owner visited the house and walked around with me to discuss the work needed. If you examine the online reviews for this establishment, you'll notice that they have an impressive 82% 5-star rating and 16% 4-star rating out of nearly 700 reviews. Most companies of this nature are fortunate to average in the 3-star range in their reviews, so this speaks volumes about the quality of this business. A couple of weeks after receiving the cost estimate, the company initiated the repair work. They proceeded with efficiency and consistently ensured the project area was cleaned up at the end of each day. My wife and I were genuinely satisfied with their work and their professionalism. The majority of the work was performed by 3 of their skilled craftsmen, with one individual, whom I'll refer to as Brock for this post, handling most of the projects in our home. Brock was a personable and courteous guy who happened to be around my age. My daughter affectionately dubbed Brock as the window man, because she would see him through our second-story windows while he was working on a ladder. All the repairs were completed on schedule, and we were now comfortably settled into our home. My wife and children were thrilled with the place, and I was content with my new job. Everything was proceeding smoothly until I had a casual conversation with my daughter exactly 2 weeks ago today. My wife had gone shopping with her mom and my mom, and I was looking after the kids. We were playing outside, and my daughter was energetically running around until she hopped onto my lap when she got tired. We were engaged in light conversation when, out of the blue, she looked at me and said, "I saw Mommy napping with the window man." Before we delve further into this, I want to emphasize that my daughter is exceptionally gifted. I understand that all parents tend to feel that way about their children, but in her case, it's an undeniable fact. Her exceptional gifts are evident to everyone who meets her, including her doctors, who formally recognized her talents. We even had her undergo testing before we relocated, and she achieved one of the highest scores ever recorded for a 4-year-old at the clinic. So when she told me what she did, I couldn't help but take it seriously. Though there was a slim chance she might have fabricated this due to her vivid imagination, I was inclined to believe her. I was utterly shocked and requested her to repeat what she had just said. She reiterated the same statement. I asked her to describe what had happened and how she had witnessed it. According to her, my wife had put Timmy and her down for their afternoon nap. Sammy explained that Timmy had dropped his pacifier behind his bed and was crying for her to retrieve it. She tried but couldn't reach it, so she went in search of her mom. When I inquired if she had called for Mommy, she replied in the negative. Instead, she mentioned that she walked over to our bedroom door and opened it, calling out for her mother. I probed further and asked her what she had seen. She recounted how Mommy had hurriedly gotten out of bed, wrapping herself in a blanket. She kissed Sammy and then led her by the hand to retrieve the pacifier and tuck them back in. I then asked where she had seen the window man, and she replied that he was lying on Daddy's side of the bed. Hearing this was incredibly painful, but I concealed my emotions and simply said, "He was." She confirmed my question with a yes. Intrigued, I pressed for details, asking her to recount what happened next. According to Sammy, Mommy left their bedroom and she overheard her talking with the window man before they ventured outside. Curiosity piqued. I inquired about her actions following this conversation. Sammy explained that she got out of bed, peeked out the window, and witnessed him driving his truck down the driveway. I responded with a heartfelt kiss and expressed gratitude for her honesty. However, what Sammy shared next hit me hard. She revealed that Mommy had whispered to her, saying, "Shh. Let's keep this our secret, okay?" Naturally, I asked how she responded to Mommy's request, and Sammy said, "I told Mommy, okay." Despite her tender age, my perceptive daughter seemed to sense that what she had witnessed was not quite right. Wanting to shield her from distress, I downplayed the situation, telling her, "Thank you so much for telling me. I'm so proud of you. Now this can be our secret, okay?" Sammy agreed, saying, "Okay, I won't tell Mommy I told you." Then she added, "Daddy, don't tell Mommy I told you." I reassured her, saying, "There's no way, this is our secret." To lighten the mood, I tickled her, and we both started laughing and shifted our conversation to another topic. It was evident that the secret my wife had asked her to keep was deeply troubling our daughter, and sharing it with me seemed to bring her a sense of relief. Later, my wife returned home, accompanied by our mothers. She beckoned me inside while our moms headed to the back porch to watch over Sammy and Timmy. Once inside, my wife presented me with a gift she had purchased for Sammy. It was a birthday present that Sammy had picked out, even though her birthday wasn't until October. I inquired about the timing, and my wife explained that she wanted to give it to her now. It was quite unexpected because Sammy hadn't inquired about this gift, and she wasn't anticipating it until her birthday. Moreover, my wife and I had established a clear understanding with Sammy regarding when she received significant gifts, only on her birthday and Christmas. Sammy had wholeheartedly accepted this arrangement, and as I mentioned earlier, she hadn't mentioned the gift again since selecting it a couple of months ago. My wife rationalized her purchase by saying, "She's such a great kid and has been so good lately. I want to reward her. I hope you're not mad." I assured her that I wasn't upset, but I couldn't help but sense that this was a form of a bribe to persuade Sammy to keep my wife's secret. When my wife presented the gift to Sammy, Sammy expressed concern, saying, "I wasn't supposed to get this until my birthday. What am I going to get then?" Deidre responded by telling Sammy, "You've been such a good girl. Mommy and Daddy want to give this to you now." To everyone's surprise, Sammy countered with, "No, I want to keep it until my birthday. I don't want it now." My wife continued to coax her into opening the gift, but Sammy resisted and looked to me for support. I spoke up and suggested, "Let's take this upstairs and put it in your closet." My wife was taken aback by Sammy's response, but I wasn't surprised. As I mentioned earlier, Sammy is quite intelligent, and she genuinely preferred not to receive the gift until her birthday. We took the gift upstairs to her closet, and Sammy appeared relieved that she didn't have to open it right away. After returning downstairs with Sammy, my dad and brother had arrived, and we spent the remainder of the day enjoying family time and sharing a meal. I went through the motions and had fun with my family, but my thoughts were consumed by what Sammy had disclosed. Later that night, I had intended to confront my wife but opted against it. I figured if Sammy's words were accurate, my wife would probably deny them. Instead, I informed my wife that I needed to get up early on Sunday morning to work on my company tasks using our home computer. She agreed and even offered to keep me company, but I declined her offer. When I woke up, I thoroughly checked our home computer but found nothing. Next, I accessed her phone using her password, but once again, I found nothing. I pondered whether Sammy might have fabricated the whole story, but her descriptions were too detailed to dismiss. The rest of the day we spent at my parents' place visiting with my aunt and uncle, who had come in from out of town. It had been over 2 years since I last saw them, so it was a pleasant reunion and an opportunity for them to meet Timmy, whom they hadn't met before. The day went well, and Deidre displayed her usual affectionate self, showing no signs of anything amiss. Back at work on Monday, I couldn't shake the thought of what Sammy had revealed. Multiple times during the day, I drove by our home to ease my suspicions. I did the same on Tuesday and repeated it on Wednesday. Still, I found nothing concrete, but a strong feeling persisted that Sammy might be telling the truth. I contemplated hiring a private investigator, but ultimately decided to purchase a camera system at Best Buy. I set up the camera system while Deidre and Sammy were away at an evening event held at our local nature center. I was at home, looking after Timmy. I strategically positioned one camera outside near the garage, overlooking the driveway. The second camera was placed in the living room, and the third found its spot in our master bedroom. I ensured that each camera was discreetly located, not easily noticeable unless someone specifically looked for them. I did have some concerns, though, about the camera in our bedroom. Despite it being mounted on the crown molding and blending in seamlessly with its white and black trim, it could potentially be spotted if someone were lying on their back and gazing directly at it. I made it a routine to activate the system before leaving for work each day and deactivate it before returning home. Since my wife and kids typically didn't spend much daytime hours in the living room, bedroom, or driveway, the cameras didn't trigger frequently. Whenever the cameras did detect motion, I received a text alert. Everything appeared normal until the following Tuesday at 1:46 p.m. when I received an alert from the driveway camera. Upon checking, I observed a truck from the contracting company approaching our driveway. Shortly after, I received another alert from the living room camera, revealing my wife kissing Brock. My worst fears were confirmed. Sammy's account was accurate. In response, I hastily headed towards my home, simultaneously calling my mom to inform her of the situation and requesting her presence at my house as soon as possible. I asked my mom to bring my brother, aunt, and uncle with her. While they were on their way, I had conversations with them over the phone. By that time, I had received an alert from the bedroom camera and had a pretty good idea of what was unfolding in there. Despite being deeply upset, I managed to keep my composure and provided instructions to my family members. I specifically told my mom and aunt to take the children outside when I confronted Deidre. I also requested my uncle and brother to join me in the bedroom during the confrontation. I explained that I wanted them as witnesses and to prevent me from resorting to violence. They readily agreed. We parked on the driveway a bit away from the house, effectively blocking Brock's truck, and then proceeded to the front door as a group. Luckily, the door was unlocked, so we entered the house without any issues. Our bedroom is situated at the back of the house, which meant that the cheaters had no chance of seeing or hearing us approaching. I led the way, with my brother and uncle right behind me, and my mom and aunt following them. The noise coming from the bedroom masked any sounds we might have made while walking up the stairs and down the hallway toward the bedroom. At this point, my heart was pounding in my chest. I signaled for my mom and aunt to continue past us to the kids' room. Then, I turned to my uncle and brother and asked if they were prepared. They both nodded affirmatively. With their agreement, I opened the bedroom door and entered. My wife let out a scream, exclaiming, "Oh no, oh my God!" Brock hastily dismounted from the bed, fell backward onto the floor, and began apologizing while reaching for his clothes. I had my phone ready and began recording, saying nothing, just standing there silently while moving my phone camera back and forth. Brock continued to apologize and started getting dressed, while my wife had the sheets pulled up to her face, crying and saying, "This wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean to hurt you, Dave. I love you so much. I'm so sorry." After a few minutes, Brock was fully dressed and sat on the floor, covering his face with his hands, still apologizing. My wife, meanwhile, kept crying and saying sorry. I instructed Brock to leave immediately, and he quickly complied. Before he departed, I warned him, "Don't even think about taking your truck. We have it blocked, and I'll be calling the company to come and pick it up." Next, I called my mother-in-law, MIL, and explained what had just occurred, asking her to come over and pick up her daughter. My wife remained in bed, under the covers, pleading with me not to make her leave, but I paid no attention to her. My mill arrived shortly after that, and when she did, my uncle, brother, and I exited the bedroom. I could hear my meal raising her voice while my wife sobbed. To my surprise, my wife left the house without any further incident. She hurried out with her head down, crying, and didn't say a word. It seemed like she was in a complete state of shock and deeply embarrassed. My meal apologized to me, gave me a heartfelt hug and kiss, and expressed her love for me. After they left, I went out to the backyard to spend time with my kids and then contacted the contracting company. After I explained the purpose of my call, they connected me to the owner's cell phone. He expressed his apologies sincerely and assured me that his company would do everything in their power to make amends. I expressed my gratitude and ended the call. Approximately an hour later, the company arrived with someone to retrieve the truck. Brock was nowhere to be seen. The following Monday, I took a day off from work to meet with a lawyer and initiate divorce proceedings. I also retained an attorney from the same firm to address the matter with the contracting company. While I have respect for the owner and his company, I believe there should be some compensation for the harm their employee caused my family. Since the day everything came to light, I haven't exchanged a single word with my wife. She has been incessantly calling and texting, apologizing, pleading for forgiveness, and asking for a second chance. However, that's not happening, at least not at this point. Against my attorney's advice, I arranged for my wife's belongings to be moved out, with my brother and one of his friends transporting them to her mother's house. Currently, I've established a routine where my wife and her mom arrive at my house at 6:30 a.m. Her mother enters, while my wife waits in the car until I depart for the office. After my workday, I go out for dinner at a restaurant and return home around 6:30 p.m. My wife and her mother have dinner with the kids before I come back home. When I'm approximately 5 minutes away from the house, I call my mother-in-law to inform her. Subsequently, my wife heads to the car while her mother remains inside the house with the kids. Upon arrival, I disregard my wife, who is seated in the car, and head straight into the house. Typically, I engage in a brief conversation with my mother-in-law to recap the day before her departure. I then spend the next 12 hours with my children, and this routine repeats 7 days a week. I acknowledge that this approach may seem excessive to some, but I want no involvement with my wife. If it were possible, I would prevent her from ever seeing my kids again, although I recognize that's not feasible. I harbor intense anger over what she did to me. The fact that she had a stranger in our bed while our children were in the adjacent room, then urged our daughter to lie on her behalf. This is an unforgivable transgression in my eyes. I've directed my lawyer to pursue full custody. Although she contends that it's unlikely, there is a chance we might secure joint 50-50 custody with my home designated as the primary residence for the children. This is the current status of the situation. Now my question is, have any of you successfully raised your children after a divorce without ever speaking another word to your ex-wife? As part of the divorce settlement, my attorney will propose that all communication occurs through a court-approved email application, and my wife is not to verbally communicate with me unless it concerns an emergency involving our children. As you can imagine, I hold strong negative feelings toward my wife and have no concern for her well-being after the divorce. While she is the mother of my children, I still remain indifferent. My family advises me to let go of my hatred and anger towards my soon-to-be ex, STBX, because it's detrimental to both me and my kids. However, I find it impossible to do so. I understand that they have my best interests at heart, but unless you've walked in my shoes, you can't truly comprehend what I'm going through. I'm eager to read your responses and intend to reply to as many people as possible, although my responses might be delayed. Update. Hello everyone. Many of you have asked for an update, so I wanted to return to provide you with the current status. First and foremost, I want to express my gratitude to all of you for your responses. Most of the messages I received were constructive and beneficial as I navigate the challenging waters of divorce. Mentally, I'm in a much better place now than I was back in June, thanks to my kids and my wonderful family, particularly my mom, dad, and brother. My children are also doing well. Timmy is too young to grasp the changes, and Sammy hasn't really noticed that her mom and I are not together in the same place, as she sees her mom every day at our house from 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. I've been having dinner at my parents' home, and then the three of us go to my house to relieve my mother-in-law and wife of their responsibilities. The kids enjoy it because they have company all day. Now, as for my STBX, she's struggling. She's still under the impression that she can win me back and keeps coming up with new offerings, thinking they will persuade me. The latest suggestion she came up with is that I could have a one-sided open relationship with as many partners as I wanted, while she remains faithful and signs a post-nuptial agreement with these conditions. Really? That's not me. I'm not like her. I'm the type of man who values a monogamous relationship, and that's what I'll be seeking in my next relationship, although it won't be happening anytime soon. She's currently seeing a therapist 3 times a week, and she has convinced her mom that she experienced a temporary bout of insanity for a couple of weeks, which is why she cheated. Frankly, I find this explanation completely implausible. She knew exactly what she was doing. I've since learned that claiming temporary insanity is a tactic some women use to rationalize their infidelity. I'm not buying into it, and I still haven't spoken a word to her. My mother-in-law is taking this situation pretty hard. She's a kind-hearted woman who loves me, her grandkids, and my parents. She's asked me several times if there's any way I could forgive and reconcile with her daughter. She expressed how genuinely sorry she is, and how much she loves me. I care deeply for my mother-in-law, but I haven't engaged in a lengthy discussion with her. Instead, I've simply told her that forgiveness and reconciliation are not possibilities for me. Regarding my wife's remorse, I do believe she is sorry, but it's more about feeling sorry for herself and regretting that she got caught. In her distorted perspective, she may have thought that having an affair with Brock was acceptable as long as it didn't negatively impact our relationship. She audaciously sent me an email explaining how even during the affair, she gave me 100% of herself, including 100% of her body. Frankly, I find this message quite irritating. Alright, that's enough about my STBX. It's making me angry just talking about her. The divorce should be finalized in a few months, and when it is, I'll come back here to update everyone. Update. By popular request, I've returned to provide an update on my situation. I'm pleased to announce that I am finally divorced from Deidre. However, the process was much more challenging than I had anticipated, filled with drama that postponed the finalization until March. As last year progressed, I remained focused on expediting the divorce process, while Deidre became increasingly desperate. She attempted to talk to me daily, but I insisted on communicating only through email and solely regarding our children. Whenever she brought up our relationship, I reiterated that our marriage was over, and we would only have a co-parenting relationship moving forward. In September, my mother-in-law informed me that Deidre had been discussing thoughts of ending her life, stating that if she couldn't have me, she didn't want to live. My mother-in-law asked if I could talk to her, and I initially resisted. Eventually, I agreed to meet with her in the presence of my mother and my mother-in-law. During the meeting, Deidre expressed her remorse and outlined everything she was willing to do for me if I would just give her another chance. She repeatedly asked me to give her just 6 months to prove herself. I allowed her to express herself until she had said everything she wanted to. Once she was done, I made it clear that I no longer saw her as a romantic partner and had no interest in any form of reconciliation, even if it were for just a single day. Following this conversation, her mother told me that she sank into deep depression and rarely left the house. In fact, my mother-in-law began coming over at 6:30 a.m. when I left for work. She would dress the kids, prepare their breakfast, and then take them back to her house to be with Deidre. She mentioned that Deidre seemed distant from them, spending most of the day in her room crying and longing for me. My daughter noticed this and asked me why Mommy was crying all the time. This deeply upset her, as well as my son Timmy, although he's young enough not to notice as much. I explained to Sammy that Mommy and I are living in separate houses now. I told her that she, Timmy, and I are staying in our house, and Mommy is living with Grammy. After clarifying this, she was okay. Her primary concern was moving to Grammy's house too. She loves her Grammy and her mom, of course, but I believe she loves me more. She was worried about leaving our house, her room, and the creek where she enjoys playing. I assured her that would never happen. After hearing that, she felt better. However, the drama with Deidre didn't end there. As the date of our final divorce hearing approached, Deidre's desperation grew, and she began calling and texting me repeatedly while I was at work. She kept listing all the things she would do for me and how I would be incredibly happy if I stayed with her, making promises and assurances. I'm summarizing, but you get the idea. Then, the day before the hearing, I received a call from my mother-in-law, who informed me that Deidre had been rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. They suspected she was having a heart attack, so she was admitted, and various tests were conducted. In the end, they determined that her condition was severe dehydration. Her mom told me that she hadn't eaten anything for the past 3 days, although she claimed to have been drinking water. It turned out she hadn't been drinking enough, leading to severe dehydration. I believe she did this intentionally to postpone the final divorce hearing. Unfortunately, her scheme worked, and the hearing was rescheduled until after the new year, and then delayed again due to bad weather. Finally, in early March, the hearing took place, and I was granted a divorce, which I was immensely relieved about. All things considered, I believe I came out quite well. We reside in an at-fault state, and I had video evidence of Deidre's infidelity. Surprisingly, the videos weren't even necessary, as Deidre and her attorney provided a comprehensive written confession to the judge. Regarding the division of assets, I ended up retaining nearly 63% because the judge allowed me to keep everything I brought into the marriage. Thank goodness. Nonetheless, Deidre ended up receiving $71,000 from me, along with child support, though there's no alimony involved. As I mentioned, I still think I got a pretty good deal, but the thought of paying child support to her doesn't sit right with me. We share custody equally, with my home being the primary residence for our kids. I'm covering my 50%, and in addition, I'm paying her 50%. Does this seem fair? Shouldn't she contribute as well? It feels like the court system is heavily biased against fathers, so that's where things stand today. We maintain the same arrangement from 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. every day, which works well, especially for the kids since they get to spend time with both parents daily. I've even re-established communication with my ex, but strictly about our children. If she inquires about my well-being, I gently redirect the conversation to focus on the kids. A recent issue has arisen in the past couple of days, which I plan to address promptly. As I mentioned in one of my previous posts, my wife and mother-in-law come over in the morning and stay until I return at 6:30 p.m. However, for the last 3 days, only my wife has been present at 6:30 p.m., not my mother-in-law. When I get home, my wife lingers and attempts to engage in conversations with me while interacting with the kids. Yesterday, little Timmy became upset when his mom left because he wanted her to stay. Predictably, my wife exploited this situation, seeking sympathy from me. Nevertheless, I remained resolute and comforted Timmy, assuring him that he would see mommy again the next morning, and he calmed down. Tomorrow, I plan to have a discussion with Deidre about this matter and stress the importance of keeping our handoff conversations brief and focused. End of story. Now, to address a question I've received from many of the respondents here. Have I shared the conversation I had with Sammy when she mentioned mommy was napping with the window man with anyone else? The answer is no, and I don't have any immediate plans to do so. I made a promise to Sammy that this would remain our secret, and I intend to honor that promise. Perhaps many years down the road, I might consider discussing it with her, but for now, I genuinely hope that she has completely forgotten whatever she may have seen. Sammy has never brought it up with me again, and continues to be as active and happy as ever, so I see no reason to revisit that conversation with her. And with that, my story comes to a close. It may not have a happy ending, but it's about as good as one can hope for given the circumstances.
All right, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in.
My situation is quite complicated. While my husband, who is in the military, was stationed abroad, I became pregnant, but not with his child. Now he wants a divorce and is planning to leave me with nothing, even though I am heavily pregnant. I'm a 25-year-old woman, and we've been married for the past 2 years. Our story began when we met at a restaurant near a military base during a trip with my family. My dad struck up a conversation with a group of men in military uniforms, and he instantly connected with my now husband, who happens to be a veteran. As the evening went on, my dad introduced him to our family, and our tables merged. Despite the presence of my father, we couldn't help but exchange glances. He didn't ask me out or for my number directly at the table. Instead, he discreetly passed me his number under it. I reached out, and that's how our communication began. We decided to get married after just 6 months of dating. I realize it might seem like a short time to commit to such a significant step, but we genuinely felt like soulmates. When we tied the knot, we were fortunate to receive a government-provided house as one of the perks of being a military couple. About a year ago, my husband was deployed. Before leaving, we had a heartfelt conversation about how we would stay in touch, how he entrusted me with managing our finances and looking after his parents while he was away. We discussed our future plans, expectations, and our excitement about starting a family, especially his eagerness to become a father. When he left, we stayed in touch as we had planned, and we managed our long-distance relationship quite well. It was wonderful to see his face and have conversations with him. However, it felt lonely because only seeing his face on a screen at certain times of the day didn't fulfill my need for physical closeness. I craved physical touch, longing to be held, but he wasn't there. Sometime later, my company hired a new colleague, and I had to train him. He was good-looking, dependable, and consistently showed interest in me. At first, I resisted his advances and made it clear that I was happily married, but he didn't seem to care. Over time, his small gestures like bringing me snacks, inviting me to dinner, engaging in casual conversations, and light touches began to affect me. I was feeling lonely, starved for physical affection, and I missed my husband. One evening after our usual dinners, we had a few drinks, and he kissed me. I kissed him back, but then I regained my senses and hurriedly left. I felt incredibly guilty afterward, to the point where I couldn't bring myself to face my husband during our video calls. What made me even more guilty was that I couldn't stop fantasizing about my colleague and our kiss, imagining what might have been. I tried to avoid him at work, but it proved to be impossible. He approached me, apologized for making me uncomfortable, and we talked. One thing led to another, and we kissed again. We couldn't deny our desires, so we eventually agreed to have a purely physical relationship. We would meet secretly, starting initially at motels and later at each other's houses. It was sheer ecstasy. Yesterday, I discovered that I was 3 months pregnant. I had attributed my unstable moods, heightened sense of smell, nausea and weight gain to lack of sleep, stress, and an unhealthy eating habit I had developed due to the pressure and bus schedule at work. I eventually went to see a doctor about these symptoms and discovered that I'm pregnant, and I've just completed my first trimester. I'm shocked and scared. There's no way it's my husband's child. I haven't been with my husband for almost a year, and he'll figure out I cheated if he sees me. What should I do? How can I keep this a secret? 2 months ago, I shared a story about getting pregnant by my colleague while my military husband was deployed and stationed overseas. Unfortunately, I couldn't take any action regarding the pregnancy because I had already passed the first trimester, so I'm quite pregnant now. My husband surprised me for my birthday 2 days ago. He wasn't supposed to return for another 3 months, and I hadn't found the courage to tell him about the pregnancy yet. To say that he was shocked and furious to find me pregnant would be an understatement. What really surprised me was the complete and absolute disgust he showed. He had a fit, breaking things and ruining the decorations for my birthday. He scolded me in front of my birthday guests and then left in anger. I haven't seen him since. We've all tried calling him, including his parents, but none of us can reach him. We're all concerned and have no idea where he is or in what condition he might be. We even contacted shelters, hospitals, and police stations, but there's been no luck. I just need a chance to explain. Edit. This is not a good update. A week after my husband went missing, his parents called mine and reassured them that he called and said he's safe. Even they, his parents, are unwilling to talk to me. They're asking my parents to convince me to sign the divorce papers he sent, despite all I did for them while their son was away. I was the one who looked after them and made sure they were okay. I feel deeply hurt by their actions. Why doesn't he come here in person, so we can have a mature conversation about this? It doesn't have to end like this. How could he treat me this way, especially considering my current situation? He's always wanted to be a father, and now that we have a blessing in our lives, he wants to abandon me. If we get divorced, do I lose the house? I can't believe he's pushing me to potentially end up homeless while I'm pregnant. Update! It's been a while since my last update. I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Her biological father got a promotion and left as soon as he could because he couldn't handle the gossip and stares we received at work. Frankly, I couldn't handle it either, so I quit my job. Being unemployed and recently divorced, yes, he divorced me, I had to find a way to provide for my baby. That's why I took legal action against my husband for child support, and I won the case. I also got to keep the house since he bought me out of it. However, I still feel like I got the short end of the stick. He earns much more than what he's paying in child support, and he refuses to meet our baby. I'm currently in discussions with a lawyer to take him back to court to increase the child support payments, especially now that I'm unemployed and unable to maintain the lifestyle I'm accustomed to and want for my child. But my lawyer advises against pushing my luck, especially since he's not even the biological father. My lawyer says it might not be worth pursuing, but I really need the financial support. I just want to provide the best care for my child, our child, to the best of my abilities. Edit. So my ex apparently filed a petition to disestablish paternity of my child through DNA testing, and the court has granted it. They're going to conduct a DNA test on my child, and I'm extremely worried about the outcome. My lawyer says it doesn't look good, especially because we're in Florida, and I might lose the child support. Please, I need advice.